President Trump, of course, as we all know, likes to make big, bold statements, and he's always short on the detail thing. But we do know it's going to cost an awful lot of money. The down payment he's talked about is $25 billion over the next year in his current defense budget. And then anything goes, possibly two, three, four, maybe $500 billion on this system. It's potentially massive and will drain resources from huge parts of the US defense budget. So it signals an American retreat to defend their homeland. So it's a big deal.
Mm.
What it's talking about is having a layered missile defense based on the Israeli defense system that we saw used against the Iranian missiles and drones. So the United States homeland, not US troops overseas, but the continental United States, have a defense against ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, and enemy aircraft. And he wants this to be 100% foolproof, so no missiles will get through. Now, think through what that means. It means they want to stop a Russian or Chinese nuclear missile attack on the American homeland. They want to neutralize the Russian and Chinese nuclear threat to America, which is, if you think about it, that is the end of nuclear deterrence we've talked about since 1945. The sort of threat of nuclear Armageddon brings peace, and he wants to end that idea. So it is a big, big deal.
Why does it end it completely? It ends it, I suppose, if America can always defend itself from nuclear missiles, but not the rest of the world.
It only works if both sides have got something to lose. If both sides think they could, their cities can be, obliterated like Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That is the underpinning of the whole thing.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we wouldn't have the dome. Europe wouldn't have the
we would,
dome.
we
So we'd get
we
it in the
wouldn't
neck,
have it,
wouldn't we?
and the Russians and Chinese wouldn't have it. So they would feel that their nuclear deterrents are rendered useless, and that will trigger potentially either an arms race with them trying to, build their own protection and ramp up their production of missiles and drones so they can try and overwhelm the American defenses. That's a huge arms race.
Mm.
Or they start doing wild things to threaten American interests to try and get themselves back into the
And
conversation.
by wild things, you mean different ways of warfare rather than plonking bombs on people's heads.
Um, Back in 1962, President Khrushchev sent boatloads of nuclear missiles to Cuba to and spark the Cuban Missile Crisis to try and undermine the American deterrent back in 1962. So the potential for a nuclear crisis involving something around the world, involving Russia, the Chinese, squaring up against the Americans. And this is unpredictable stuff we're entering in. We are ditching, or the Americans are potentially ditching, 80 years of nuclear stability for an arms race.
Has he just, do you think, seen the Iron Dome system in Israel, which has proved incredibly effective, and thought, oh, I'll have a bit of that? But then Israel is a tiny landmass and America is a whopping great landmass.
Correct. And also, the Israelis are only defending from one direction against Iran. The Americans potentially have got to defend against the Russians, the Chinese, against Russian and Chinese submarine launch systems that can fire from any direction against the United States. So it is a huge undertaking. Um, Maybe it's not even technically possible to get to the degree of perfection that President Trump wants, but even the demand or the idea of setting this up can trigger those unexpected reactions that I talked about earlier.
Am I being a bit dense, given that there are other nuclear powers, not as big as America or Russia or China, but there are other nuclear powers in this world? And so between them, I guess that deterrence would still exist, no?
I mean, for Britain, for example, and Russia, um, uh, Britain doesn't have any anti-missile defences, and the Russians only have a very limited one. So yes, our deterrent would still be
in
in
play.
place, and we still have that nuclear standoff. And obviously, the French as well, and the Israelis, and the Pakistanis, and the Indians, and the Chinese, they are all in play. But the Americans are trying to move themselves out of this nuclear standoff into a nuclear bubble of defense.
It's fascinating stuff, isn't it? I mean, it's the stuff of movies, but it's apparently real. Well, the idea is real anyway.
President Trump idea. So whether
Yeah.
it's real or not, that's a completely
Okay.
different matter. But he's floated this as his vision, and set the American Space Force with a mission to make it so. Whether it actually happens, we'll wait and watch, as we do with any President Trump idea.
Thank you very much indeed, Tim. Good to talk to you.